I was born in a small village in rural India, in the state of Karnataka. My name is Rajiv Patel, son of a traditional Hindu family of the Brahmin caste. My father, Sanjay Patel, was a respected priest at the local Shiva temple, and from childhood I was prepared to follow in his footsteps. Our family was extremely devout and rigorous in its religious practices. My mother, Priya, cared for the home and taught us Hindu traditions with zeal and dedication. We had a small altar at home where we performed daily pujas, and the presence of the deities was constant in our daily lives. I grew up venerating the many gods of the Hindu pantheon, learning sacred mantras and participating in rituals from a very young age. Our house was frequently visited by other priests and people from the community seeking spiritual advice from my father. The scent of incense, flowers, and sandalwood oil permeated our walls and mingled with the constant sound of chants and recitations of sacred texts. It was an environment completely immersed in Hindu tradition. At the age of 7, I began my formal studies of the Vedas, something extremely honorable for a Brahmin boy. I spent hours daily memorizing the sacred texts in Sanskrit, even without fully understanding their meaning. My father was rigorous in my training and frequently disciplined me when I made mistakes in my recitations. I remember waking before dawn for ritual ablutions in the river near our village, followed by long sessions of meditation and study. These practices shaped my identity from an early age. While other children played, I was occupied with my religious obligations, something I accepted with pride, as I understood the privilege of my position in the social and spiritual hierarchy. Our neighbors treated us with great respect and often brought offerings for my father to perform rituals in their homes or businesses. This deference fueled my pride in belonging to the highest caste. During my adolescence, I immersed myself in the study of the Upanishads and Vedanta philosophy, seeking to understand the concepts of Brahman, Atman, karma, and reincarnation. At 16, I underwent the Upanayana ritual, receiving the sacred cord that symbolized my status as twice born. It was a moment of great celebration in our community, and my family held a considerable feast to mark this important passage. My studies intensified after this ritual, and I began to assume some priestly responsibilities at the local temple, assisting my father in ceremonies and rituals. I learned the art of preparing offerings, conducting worship, and interpreting omens. My destiny seemed set and unquestionable. The village elders frequently commented on my dedication and knowledge, predicting that I would become an even more respected priest than my father. I absorbed these compliments as confirmation that I was on the right path. At 22, after completing my formal studies, I married Lakshmi, a young woman from another Brahmin family chosen by my parents. It was an arranged marriage, as dictated by our traditions. Lakshmi was devout, modest, and well-versed in religious practices, the perfect wife for a future high priest. We established our own home near the temple, and she quickly adapted to the intense routine of rituals and visitors. My position in the community solidified, and my dedication to religious practices was exemplary. I performed all the prescribed rituals, fasted on holy days, made pilgrimages to important temples, and rigorously followed the caste restrictions. I deeply believed in the cycle of reincarnation and worked diligently to accumulate good karma, aiming for an even better position in my next life. Dharma, sacred duty, guided every aspect of my existence. Despite all this religious immersion, I occasionally experienced moments of inner turmoil. During my deepest meditations, I sometimes questioned the multiplicity of gods and the complexity of the rituals. There seems to be a void I couldn't fill, an insurmountable distance between myself and the deities I worshipped so fervently. These thoughts disturbed me, and I quickly suppressed them, considering them negative temptations that could lead me astray from my Dharma. I then intensified my practices, seeking to silence these doubts through more discipline and devotion. I never shared these anxieties with anyone, not even Lakshmi, fearing that it would tarnish my reputation or, worse, bring disgrace to my family. A Brahmin with doubts was unthinkable in our community. The breaking point in my life came unexpectedly when I was 27. My father fell gravely ill with a disease that wasted his body day by day. As a family of priests, we performed countless healing rituals, offered costly sacrifices to the gods, consulted astrologers and practitioners of Ayurvedic medicine, all to no avail. My father, who had always been strong and vigorous, became a shadow of his former self. His pain was evident, and our despair grew daily. How could such a devout man, who had dedicated his entire life to the service of the gods, be abandoned in his moment of need? This question tormented me as I watched him suffer. Contradiction between our devotion and the apparent silence of the deities opened a rift in my faith that would never fully close. During this difficult time, our village received a visit from a medical team from a non-governmental organization that offered free medical care in rural areas of India. Among the doctors was a man named Thomas, a Christian Indian from the state of Kerala. Reluctantly, we allowed him to examine my father, more out of desperation than trust. Thomas diagnosed an advanced kidney condition and provided medication that brought some relief to my father's suffering. During his daily visits to administer the medication, we would chat briefly. I noticed that Thomas was different from other doctors I had met. There was a genuine serenity and compassion about him that intrigued me. One day I asked him where this inner peace came from, and he mentioned his faith in Jesus Christ. Initially, I dismissed his words as irrelevant to me. After all, I was a Brahmin, a scholar of the highest scriptures of Hinduism. What could I learn from the religion of the colonizers, a foreign faith that we considered inferior and suitable only for the lowest castes? However, my father's condition continued to deteriorate, and with it, my faith in the gods I had served all my life. One night, after a particularly strenuous ritual that brought no improvement, I found myself alone in the temple, exhausted and desperate. For the first time in my life, I wept openly, questioning the purpose of so many years of devotion and sacrifice. That night, I had a vivid dream that would change the course of my life forever. In the dream, I found myself in a dark labyrinth of seemingly endless corridors. I carried heavy volumes of the Vedas and other sacred texts, and their weight was almost unbearable. I desperately sought a way out, but each new corridor only led me to another equally gloomy one. Exhausted, I fell to the ground, unable to continue. It was then that a soft light began to illuminate the room. Looking up, I saw a male figure approaching. His face radiated a compassion I had never seen before, not even in the most sacred representations of Hindu deities. He extended his hand to me and said simply, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Upon touching his hand, the books I carried vanished, and I felt an indescribable relief, as if a burden I had carried all my life had been lifted. I awoke startled, with tears in my eyes and a sense of peace that contrasted sharply with the inner turmoil of the past few months. The next day, when Thomas came to visit my father, I discreetly asked him about Jesus. He perceived my genuine interest and, before leaving, gave me a small book containing the Gospel of John in Hindi. I hesitantly accepted it, aware of the risk I was taking simply by possessing such literature. That night, hidden on the terrace of our house, I began to read by the light of a lamp. The first words captivated me in an inexplicable way. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The idea of a God who became flesh and dwelt among men was completely contrary to everything I had learned about the divine nature, but something in this message resonated deeply within me. I continued reading night after night, carefully hiding the small book during the day. Jesus' words were unlike anything I had ever studied. Instead of elaborate rituals and purification rules, he spoke of love, forgiveness, and a personal relationship with God. The simplicity and depth of his teachings challenged me. Particularly impactful was his statement, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." This directly contradicted our Hindu belief that there are many equally valid paths to divinity. The exclusivity of this statement simultaneously disturbed and fascinated me. How could a single man claim to be the only way to God? It was a bold claim that demanded to be either rejected or accepted wholeheartedly, without compromise. My father passed away 3 weeks later, despite all our efforts. We performed the elaborate funeral rites according to our tradition, and outwardly I maintained the composure expected of a son and priest. Internally, however, a silent revolution was taking place. My father's death left a void that ritual practices could not fill. The words of comfort offered by Hindu sacred texts seemed distant and abstract in the face of the brutal reality of death. In contrast, the words of Jesus that I had secretly read offered concrete hope. "I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he'll die, yet shall he live." This promise drew me in more and more. After the official mourning period, I fully assumed my father's priestly responsibilities at the temple. Outwardly, I performed all expected duties with precision, but my heart was no longer in those rituals. I continued my secret study of the gospel, and occasionally met with Thomas when he visited our village. Our conversations were always discreet, usually under the pretext of discussing community medical matters. He patiently answered my many questions about Jesus and Christianity, never pressuring me. Over time, I began to perceive the profound differences between the belief system in which I had been raised and a Christian message. In Hinduism, salvation was sought through numerous cycles of reincarnation and personal effort to accumulate good karma. Christianity offered salvation as a free gift, based not on personal merit, but on divine grace manifested through the sacrifice of Jesus. The tension between my new discoveries and my position in the community became increasingly difficult to bear. During the day, I conducted rituals in which I no longer fully believed. At night, I avidly read the words of Jesus and meditated upon them. This duplicity caused me intense inner conflict. I knew that if my secret readings and doubts were discovered, I would face severe social consequences. A Brahmin who abandoned his ancestral faith would be considered a traitor, not only to his religion, but to his entire lineage and community. Furthermore, I worried about Lakshmi, who remained devoutly Hindu and would certainly suffer the consequences of any decision I made. About a year after my father's death, I had another significant dream. This time, I found myself on the banks of a large river, similar to the Ganges, considered sacred in our tradition. On my bank, priests performed elaborate rituals. People bathed in the waters seeking purification, and the air was filled with the aroma of incense and flowers. On the other side of the river, I saw a simple wooden cross on a hill, radiant in the sunlight. A gentle voice, the same one I had heard in the previous dream, invited me to cross. I looked at the turbulent waters between me and the other bank, aware of the danger. It was then that I saw Jesus walking on the water towards me, extending his hand. If I wanted to reach him, I would have to abandon everything that was familiar and safe. I woke up with my heart racing, knowing that the moment of decision had arrived. The next day, while performing a morning ritual at the temple, I experienced something extraordinary. As I recited mantras I had known since childhood, I suddenly felt as if the words lost all meaning. The statues of the gods before me, whom I had always venerated, seemed to transform into mere objects of stone and metal. An unprecedented clarity invaded my mind, and I understood that I could not continue living in duplicity. I needed to choose between remaining in a tradition I no longer believed in, or following what I now recognized as truth, regardless of the consequences. At that moment, silently in my heart, I made my choice. I would follow Jesus, whatever the cost. The inner decision had been made, but the outward manifestation of that choice would require courage I did not yet fully possess. I continued my duties at the temple for a few more weeks, while carefully considering how to proceed. Finally, I decided to share the truth with Lakshmi before anyone else. One evening, after our household rituals, I told her about my secret readings, my dreams, and the transformation that had occurred in my heart. I expected anger, shock, or contempt, but her initial reaction was one of profound confusion and sadness. How can you abandon everything we are, everything our family has represented for generations? What will happen to us? Her questions were valid and had no easy answers. I asked her simply to consider reading the little gospel that had transformed my life. To my surprise, she agreed, perhaps more out of love for me than genuine interest. In the following weeks, Lakshmi discreetly read the gospel, occasionally asking questions that I tried to answer with the little knowledge I possessed. She didn't demonstrate the same conviction I had experienced, but neither did she completely reject the message. Her main concern was practical. How would we survive if I abandoned my position as a priest? Where would our sustenance come from? How would we face the inevitable ostracism? These were questions for which I had no concrete answers, only the growing confidence that the God who had called me would also provide. News of my change of faith eventually spread through the village. At first, it was just rumors based on subtle changes in my behavior and my growing reluctance to perform certain rituals. Then, one day, I was confronted directly by my maternal uncle, also a respected priest. He found me in the temple and, without preamble, asked, "Is it true that you have been reading Christian texts and are considering abandoning our faith?" The moment of truth had arrived sooner than I expected. Taking a deep breath, I confirmed that yes, I had found the truth in Jesus Christ and could no longer serve in the temple with integrity. His face instantly hardened, and he walked away without saying anything more. I knew I'd just sealed my fate in the community. The following days were a whirlwind of confrontations and consequences. I was summoned to a meeting with the village council of elders, including other Brahmin priests and community leaders. The meeting was held in the open area of the temple, and it seemed as if the entire village was present to witness it. The accusations were direct and severe: betrayal of ancestral traditions, defilement of the sacred temple, corrupting influence of foreigners. I was questioned about how a man educated in the highest texts could be deceived by a foreign religion. When it was my turn to speak, I tried to explain my journey, my dreams, the peace I had found in Jesus. My words were met with expressions of disbelief, anger, and, on some older faces, profound sadness. The council's decision was unanimous. I would be officially excommunicated from my caste, forbidden from exercising any priestly function, and our family would be ostracized by the community. We returned home that night, Lakshmi and I, walking in silence as neighbors who had known us all our lives closed their doors as we passed. At home, we sat in the dark, trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. Her silent tears tore at me more than any public condemnation. Yet, amidst the desolation, I felt a strange inner peace, the confirmation that, despite the high price, I had chosen the right path. I prayed silently, asking for strength to face what was to come. The following morning, we found a message written on the outside wall of our house: "Traitor, leave our village." I understood that we had no choice but to leave. Our situation was untenable, even dangerous. We quickly gathered what little we could carry and left before full dawn. We had no definite destination, only the knowledge that Thomas worked at a Christian hospital in the city of Bangalore, a few days' journey away. With our limited savings, we bought train tickets and left behind the only life we knew. The journey to Bangalore was physically and emotionally exhausting. Lakshmi rarely spoke, lost in her own thoughts and grieving the life we had lost. I alternated between moments of absolute certainty and periods of terrifying doubt. Had I really made the right choice? How would we rebuild our lives? What future could we have as social outcasts? The questions haunted me as the train moved through the Indian countryside, taking us further and further away from everything we knew. We arrived in Bangalore, exhausted and disoriented by the city's sheer size. With some difficulty, we found the hospital where Thomas worked. His surprise at seeing us was quickly replaced by understanding when I explained our situation. With a compassion that confirmed everything I had learnt about Christian love, he offered us temporary shelter in his own home, where he lived with his wife Sarah and their 2 young children. Their hospitality was a balm to our wounded spirits. For the first time, we experienced what it meant to be part of a Christian community, where we were accepted not because of our caste or position, but simply as human beings in need. During the following weeks, I continued my study of the Christian scriptures, now openly and with the guidance of Thomas and the pastor of the small church he attended. I began to understand more deeply concepts such as grace, redemption, and the meaning of Jesus' sacrifice. The idea that God himself had taken human form to suffer in our place was radically different from the Hindu conception of divine avatars. Gradually, the pieces of the spiritual puzzle fell into place, and the beauty of the gospel became increasingly clear to me. Lakshmi watched my journey with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. She accompanied me to services at the local church, but remained reserved, observing everything with a critical eye. I noticed, however, that she began to ask deeper questions during our evening conversations, revealing a genuine interest that went beyond mere tolerance of my new faith. Sarah, Thomas's wife, became a close friend to her, helping her navigate the cultural complexities of her new reality. This genuine friendship impressed Lakshmi, accustomed as she was to the rigid social divisions of our village. The practical question of how we would support ourselves remained. I possessed no professional skills beyond my religious knowledge, which now seemed irrelevant. Thomas, however, suggested that my education and fluency in several Indian languages could be valuable. Through his contacts, I found work as a translator for a Christian organization that produced educational materials in various regional languages. The salary was modest, but enough for us to rent a small apartment and start our lives anew. Lakshmi, who had always been skilled with handicrafts, began sewing clothes for a local shop, contributing to our new financial situation. Slowly, we built a new existence, far removed from the status and privileges of our previous life, but with a freedom we had never known. 3 months after our arrival in Bangalore, I decided to be baptized. The ceremony was simple, held in a small river on the outskirts of the city. Friends from the local church were present, including Thomas and his family. As I entered the water with the pastor, I vividly recalled my dream of the river and the crossing. While immersed in the water, I felt an indescribable joy, as if every purification ritual I had performed throughout my life had been merely a shadow of this moment of true spiritual cleansing. I emerged from the water as a new person, no longer defined by my caste or family tradition, but as a child of God. As I left the water, I noticed Lakshmi watching intently, with tears in her eyes. They weren't tears of sadness, I realized, but of something deeper, perhaps understanding or even envy of a peace she was beginning to desire for herself. A month after my baptism, Lakshmi surprised me by expressing her desire to also follow Jesus. Her journey had been quieter than mine, without dramatic dreams or moments of sudden revelation, but equally genuine. The daily witness of love and acceptance she had experienced in the Christian community, combined with her continuous reading of the scriptures, had gradually transformed her heart. On the day of her baptism, her face radiated a serenity I had never seen before. Together, we had crossed the metaphorical river, leaving behind not only a religion, but an entire identity and social standing. The loss was immense, but the gain even greater. Our integration into the Christian community continued in the following months. We faced adaptation challenges, discovering that even among Christians there were cultural and theological differences that we needed to navigate. Occasionally, we experienced subtle discrimination because of our Hindu background, mainly from lower caste Christians who viewed our conversion with suspicion, questioning whether we had truly abandoned our Brahmin mentality. These experiences were painful, but they also offered opportunities for growth, reminding us that true Christianity transcends cultural and social barriers. About a year after our arrival in Bangalore, we received news from our village, whom my mother had become seriously ill and was asking to see me. The message came through a distant cousin who worked in the city. After much prayer and consultation with Christian friends, we decided to return soon. The journey back was fraught with apprehension. We didn't know what kind of reception we would find, whether we would be welcomed or face open hostility. We arrived discreetly and went straight to my mother's house, now managed by my younger brother. The sight of my mother, weakened by illness, broke my heart. Despite her physical frailty, her eyes lit up when she saw us. Our meeting was emotional, with tears on both sides. She expressed her sadness at the family's separation, but also her unconditional love for me. During the 3 days we spent caring for her, I had opportunities to gently share about my new faith. I wasn't seeking to convert her, but I wanted her to understand the peace and joy I had found. To my surprise, she listened attentively, occasionally asking questions that revealed an unexpected openness. Before we left, she asked me to pray for her, not to Hindu gods, but to my new God. That simple moment of prayer beside her bed was one of the most precious of my life. 2 weeks after our return to Bangalore, we received the news of her passing. The pain of loss was intense, but there was comfort in knowing that we had parted in peace. Our life in Bangalore gradually stabilized. Over time, I was invited to work more directly with the local church, using my knowledge of Hindu texts to build bridges of dialogue with the Hindu community. I discovered that my previous training, which initially seemed like an obstacle, had become a valuable tool for communicating the gospel in a culturally relevant way. I began ministering to other converts of Hindu background, helping them navigate the same challenges we had faced. Lakshmi, in turn, started a literacy program for women in a poor neighborhood of the city, combining basic education with simple biblical teaching. 5 years after our arrival in Bangalore, our first daughter was born, whom we named Grace, a name that perfectly encapsulated our journey. Holding her in my arms, I reflected on the contrast between the life she would have and the one I grew up in. She would never know the suffocating restrictions of the caste system, never be defined by her birth or limited by age-old traditions. She would be raised knowing God's unconditional love, free to develop her gifts and potential without the barriers that had shaped my own childhood. This freedom was perhaps the greatest gift that our decision to follow Jesus had given us. Today, 15 years after that first dream in the temple, I look back and clearly see the divine hand guiding every step of our journey. The path was not easy. We lost family, status, financial security, and cultural identity. We faced rejection, discrimination, and moments of profound doubt. There were days when I questioned everything, days when the loss seemed greater than the gain. But through every challenge, the constant presence of Jesus sustained us. The peace he promised, a peace that surpasses all understanding, has proven real in our daily experience. Our family has grown. We now have 3 children, each a living testament to God's faithfulness. Our home is simple compared to the one we had in the village, but it is filled with love, laughter, and a spiritual freedom we never knew before. We maintain aspects of our Indian culture that do not contradict our Christian faith, celebrating festivals with new understanding and teaching our children to value their cultural heritage without being limited by it. Our local church has become a true family, composed of people from diverse castes and backgrounds, united by the love of Christ. In it, we have found the community we lost, and so much more. Occasionally, we receive news from our native village. Some family members have gradually re-established contact, initially cautiously, then with growing acceptance. My younger brother visits us annually, bringing nephews and nieces we would otherwise never have met. These partial reconciliations are precious gifts that I deeply value. Not all relationships have been restored, and some wounds remain open, reminding us of the cost of our choice. But even these ongoing losses are part of our story of redemption, silent witnesses to the value we place on the truth we have found. My experience as a former Brahmin converted to Christianity provides me with a unique perspective on both religious traditions. I clearly see both the beauty and the limitations of Hinduism, recognizing partial truths present in its teachings, while also understanding how it fundamentally differs from the Christian message. I do not approach my past with contempt or resentment, but with gratitude for the path that led me to where I am today. Every mantra I memorized, every ritual I performed, every text I studied was part of the journey that eventually led me to Jesus. God even used my Brahmin background to prepare me for the encounter with His grace. If you are listening to my story today and identify with the spiritual quest I have described, allow me to encourage you. Perhaps you too are trapped in religious traditions that do not satisfy the deepest longing of your heart. Perhaps you perform rituals out of obligation, while inwardly questioning their purpose and effectiveness. Perhaps you fear the consequences of following the truth you are beginning to glimpse. I want to assure you that no price is too high for the freedom and peace that Jesus offers. The losses we face in this world are temporary, but the relationship with God that He makes possible is eternal. Jesus does not promise a life without difficulties, but He promises to be with us in every difficulty we face. The same invitation Jesus extended to me, He extends to you today. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. It is not a call to exchange one set of religious rules for another, but an invitation to a personal relationship with the living God. It is not a promise of material prosperity or social status, but of inner peace and purpose that transcend external circumstances. It is a call that demands courage to respond to, but which brings a reward beyond any sacrifice. My name is Rajiv Patel, formerly a proud Brahmin priest, proud of my position and knowledge, now a simple follower of Jesus Christ. I have lost much on this journey, but gained infinitely more. If you are on your own journey of seeking, know that there is a God who is already seeking you, who knows your name and sees the questions of your heart. He is patient, waiting for you to take the first step towards Him, and when you do, you will discover, as I have discovered, that He has already traveled most of the way to find you. Are you ready to cross your own river?